Welcome to G-UDRT Demystified, a short series of videos introducing common RT as required by UK student pilots. In this episode we look at frequency monitoring codes. You may know these by the alternative name of Listening Squawks. We discuss what frequency monitoring codes are and how they are used. We also review the RT a pilot using such a code may experience when a controller needs to make contact for some reason. Let's start by looking at what frequency monitoring codes are. They are a facility that exists for pilots routing close to certain ATC aerodromes. Where an aerodrome has such a code, it will be published in the AIP and other sources but may be varied by NOTAM. They are used where the pilot intends to remain outside of controlled airspace, and also decides to not initiate direct contact with the aerodrome's ground station. The pilot selects the aerodrome's relevant frequency on the radio and the specified frequency monitoring code on the transponder. When the controller sees an aircraft is squawking the appropriate code, it lets them understand that the pilot is monitoring their frequency. Should the controller see that the aircraft has, or is likely to infringe controlled airspace, the controller is able to call the pilot and advise them. Therefore, the use of frequency monitoring codes can both prevent and mitigate the effect of airspace infringements. Now let's look at the RT associated with the use of a frequency monitoring code via a typical example. Our pilot is flying north. They intend to route close to the controlled airspace at some town. Instead of requesting a service, the pilot has tuned into some town radar on the radio and set the published frequency monitoring code on their transponder. However, our pilot is out of position. Somehow they are further west than they intended. Without intervention, they will shortly infringe some town's airspace. We'll pick up the example as the controller on duty seeks to prevent that infringement. The controller needs to contact the aircraft and notes that it is wearing the aerodrome's frequency monitoring code. Therefore the controller will make blind transmissions on the appropriate frequency. This will include the squawk code in use, the position and level of the aircraft, and the direction of flight.
Traffic squawking 0018, southwest of Plaintown, indicating altitude 2,100 feet, tracking north.
Before we look at the pilot's call, there is an alternative to the controller's call to consider. If the aircraft is fitted with a Mode S transponder, its call sign may be derived from the transponder's signals. This may be used by the controller. In which case, the initial call might become
Golf Uniform Delta Romeo Tango, squawking 0018, southwest of Plaintown, indicating altitude 2,100 feet, tracking north.
A pilot monitoring the frequency who hears such a call and believes, based on the information provided, that theirs is the aircraft being referred to, should contact their traffic control accordingly. This call can simply be the ground station's call sign, followed by the full call sign of the aircraft.
Some town radar, Golf Uniform Delta Romeo Tango.
The controller will now let the pilot understand the reason for contacting them. They may assign the aircraft a discrete squawk code to positively identify it before giving further information. However, in our example, the issue is more urgent and the controller deals with the impending infringement as a priority.
Golf Romeo Tango, controlled airspace boundary 2 nautical miles ahead. Suggest turn to avoid.
As you'd expect, the pilot should respond with their intentions. Here, glancing out to the right, our pilot realizes that Plaintown is much further east of their position than expected if they were on track for the planned route. They execute a turn to the east.
Turning east, Golf Romeo Tango.
We'll leave the flight at this point. Having dealt with the need to prevent an infringement, the controller may now progress to identify the aircraft on radar and provide the pilot with a service outside of controlled airspace. They are not obliged to do so, however. Neither is the controller obliged to warn the pilot ahead of an infringement. They may have more pressing priorities at the time. If, as is more typical, a pilot has not been contacted by the time they leave the vicinity of the aerodrome, they should change frequency and return to a conspicuity squawk. There is no need to say anything to the controller. Also understand that the use of a monitoring code does not imply that any form of air traffic service is being provided. Additionally, The pilot remains responsible for their own navigation and, in particular, for obtaining permission to enter controlled airspace and aerodrome traffic zones. Frequency monitoring codes are one tool available to pilots to help prevent infringements. Want to learn more? The G-UDRT app looks at this and many more topics in detail. In fact, G-UDRT contains 58 sessions. These cover everything from the very basics of RT right through to long dynamically branching practice flights. You can download the app from your device's app store, or visit our website at www.g-udrt.co.uk.